The longest war in history didn't end with a grand battle or a treaty in a palace. The so-called century war between Viridia and Eldoria simply faded away. It vanished not with a bang, but with a whisper. Generations were consumed, the land reshaped, but the end came from a secret pact, made in the shadows, not on the battlefield. The war began over a sliver of land, a forested valley rich with iron ore. What started as a border skirmish escalated as pride and ambition took over. The original reason for the war was soon forgotten. For most, it became a fact of life. The Century War was a slow, grinding affair. Years of fighting, years of uneasy truces. These truces were never true peace, just pauses to regroup. The war became a machine, devouring soldiers, food, and money, leaving only grief and hollow victories. The surprising end came when hope was gone, and the war seemed destined to last forever. Orders to fight simply stopped coming. The silence on the front lines was more shocking than any cannon's roar. No final clash, no grand announcement, just a quiet revolution. A secret agreement rewrote the future of two kingdoms, without a single sword drawn. This is the story of how two people chose a different path. The war lasted 116 years. 5 generations lived and died in its shadow. For Viridia and Eldoria, the war was life itself, shaping language, songs, and dreams. Every village mourned sons and fathers lost to endless campaigns. Over 1 million died in battle, but famine and disease claimed even more. Armies stripped the land bare, leaving villagers to starve through harsh winters. Disease spread from crowded camps to towns, creating a world of constant suffering. Men were conscripted, families torn apart, women left to run farms and raise children alone. Children learned to hide from press gangs. Joy was rare. The land bore scars. Forests cut, fields burned. The disputed valley turned to wasteland. The valley, once beautiful and rich, became a symbol of senseless destruction. The century of sorrow poisoned not just the people, but the very earth. Life was survival, not living. The war's legacy was grief, hardship, and a landscape stripped of hope. Peace seemed impossible, and suffering became the only constant. Yet, even in this darkness, the seeds of change were quietly sown. The war was a dark inheritance passed from parent to child. Princes and princesses were raised on stories of ancestral heroism and enemy cruelty. Questioning the war was unthinkable. It was their birthright. Each new ruler felt the weight of history, pressured to continue the fight. Lords and nobles, profiting from war, fueled old grievances and pushed for more campaigns. For soldiers, the reasons for fighting were lost. They fought because it was expected. The war was woven into society. Economies, politics, and identities depended on it. To imagine peace was to imagine a world without meaning. This generational inertia made the conflict seem unbreakable. The war was not just of armies, but of memory and identity. Stories of hatred and sacrifice kept the cycle alive. The struggle defined what it meant to be Viridian or Eldorian. Breaking free would require more than just ending the fighting. Many peace talks were held, grand, public affairs with banners and speeches. For a moment, hope would flicker, but it always faded. The talks were about politics, not peace. Each side demanded the impossible. No one wanted to appear weak, so compromise was out of reach. The summit of the Silver Bridge came closest, but collapsed over the disputed valley. The war resumed, bitterness deepened, and blame was traded. Repeated failures bred cynicism among the people. Announcements of new talks were met with shrugs and sighs. Leaders seemed trapped by pride and power, unable to end the suffering. Hopelessness spread, making war feel permanent. The idea of peace became a distant fantasy. The broken talks only reinforced the belief that only total victory could end the conflict. The people lost faith in their rulers' ability to change anything. The cycle of war and failed peace became the new normal. But beneath the surface, something different was beginning. Real change began not in a throne room, but in a field hospital. Elias, a Viridian army surgeon, saw the enemy's wounds and dying words were just like his own people's. He realized the enemy was simply another human, caught in the same machine. Elias began leaving medical supplies for Eldorian patrols at the front line. Suspicion gave way to quiet exchanges, bandages for bread, notes for drawings. Soldiers on both sides started to see each other as people, not monsters. Elias became the center of a secret network, connecting those tired of fighting. Messages and small acts of kindness crossed the lines, risking death for a chance at peace. The network grew slowly, built on trust and desperation. Only a few dozen at first, but it was a seed of peace in hostile soil. Even in darkness, human decency survived. The desire for peace proved stronger than any king's orders. This grassroots movement laid the foundation for the final pact. It started with those forced to fight, not those who gave the orders. The war's end would come from the bottom up. The whispers in the dark became a quiet revolution. And soon, the highest ranks would hear them. The whispers reached the heirs, Prince Cailan of Viridia and Princess Lyra of Eldoria. Cailan, unlike his father, saw the true cost of war-crippled veterans, widows, and ruined towns. Lyra, managing her kingdom's finances, saw the war's drain and questioned old stories. Through Elias's network, Cailan and Lyra began to communicate. Their first messages were cautious, but soon they shared a secret desire for peace. They wrote for months, talking not of borders, but of bread prices and dreams for a better future. They met in secret at a ruined monastery in the disputed valley. With only 2 guards each, they risked everything for a chance at change. There, surrounded by the war's ghosts, they made a pact. Not a treaty, but a promise. When they took their thrones, they would not continue the war. They would let the fighting stop and rule as neighbors, not enemies. Their promise was simple, but it changed everything. The pact was a quiet rebellion against generations of hatred. It was hope, born in secrecy, that would one day reshape their world. The future of 2 kingdoms now rested on their courage, and the world would never be the same. The pact stayed secret for 3 years, as Cailan and Lyra waited for their chance. They quietly placed less aggressive commanders and redirected funds away from war. When the old Viridian king died, Cailan became king and shocked his court. He ordered his armies to hold positions, not attack. Nobles called it cowardice, but Cailan stood firm. He had made a promise. In Eldoria, Lyra became regent as her father fell ill. She matched Cailan's order, her army stood down. Both sides waited, the front line silent for the first time in a century. Weeks passed and hope slowly returned. Finally, Cailan and Lyra revealed their pact with a joint proclamation. Hostilities ended immediately. The disputed valley became neutral, its resources shared. The solution bypassed old arguments. No victory, no defeat, just a new beginning. For the first time in 116 years, the war was over. The people, stunned, dared to hope. The silence of peace was more powerful than any battle. The world had changed, quietly but completely, and the promise was kept. The end of the war brought not wild celebration, but stunned relief. People were wary, but as months passed with no fighting, hope grew. Farmers planted without fear, mothers watched children play in peace. Life's ordinary rhythm slowly returned. Soldiers came home, learning to be fathers and craftsmen again. The scars of war ran deep, but for the first time there was a future to build. Trade reopened, and former enemies became trading partners. Old hatreds faded as people discovered shared humanity. The disputed valley was rebuilt as a protectorate of peace. Viridian and Eldorian workers restored the land together, profits funding schools and hospitals. The valley became a symbol of cooperation, not conflict. Peace meant freedom from fear, and the weight of generations was lifted. People could define themselves by their craft, not by war. The new era dawned quietly, the result of a secret promise kept, and the world moved forward together. The secret pact became legend, a story of wisdom over warfare. King Cailan and Queen Lyra's friendship became the foundation of a new relationship. The valley, once a no-man's land, is now the Valley of Concord, home to a university for diplomacy. Old forts are now museums and parks. Children play where soldiers once stood guard. The transformation is a living monument to peace. This history proves even the longest conflicts can end. Elias's story shows peace can begin with small acts of humanity. Cailan and Lyra's pact shows leaders can break cycles of violence. Our shared humanity is always stronger than what divides us. If you're fascinated by hidden histories, subscribe and join us as we uncover more forgotten tales.